So the results of this election are always significant, we know, for Canada. Remember the saying, if they sneeze, we catch a cold? Well, we want to see what a second Trump administration will mean for us in Canada. So joining us now is Vassy Kapelos, CTV's chief political correspondent. Good to have you here and be sitting with you this morning.
It's good to be here with you as well.
Okay, let's start with the very latest from the PMO. They have just issued a longer statement. It says in part, Canada and the U.S. have the world's most successful partnership. We are neighbors and friends, united by a shared history, common values, and steadfast ties between our peoples. We are also each other's largest trade partners, and our economies are deeply intertwined. Vassy, is this a congratulations or reminder for President-elect Trump?
I feel like a little of column A, a little of column B, leaning heavy to column B. It's kind of like, and the picture that's posted on the statement that was posted to social media is also like of Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau, like, hey, remember me? Remember we were kind of friendly at one point? The interesting point to me is just on a personal relationship level, a lot of advisors who have now written books, left the Trump administration and wrote books, actually wrote about how Trump didn't like Trudeau and some of the disparaging things that he said. Now, that didn't prevent Trudeau from landing NAFTA again, but it is going to create an interesting dynamic going forward.
Yeah, so this is sort of a trying to reframe before we start round two.
Set the frame initially, yeah.
Okay, well, we know that last year Canadian delegations have been going to Washington. They had been meeting, there were meetings that were happening in preparation for a possible Trump administration. So are we ready for round two?
I don't know if you can ever be ready. I will say that there has been this so-called Team Canada approach. A war room was put in place last January following a cabinet retreat.
Interesting.
A few ministers leading the charge, along with the ambassador who's here, posted here, Kirsten Hillman. They have, fanned out across the United States, met every level of government, as many people as they can close to Donald Trump. But this time is different versus 2016. We don't really know, other than like RFK Jr. and maybe Elon Musk, like who are his most trusted advisors? Who will form cabinet? Who can you develop a relationship with in order to curry favor in the administration eventually? It's all much more nebulous this time around. So I think the challenges are immense. They are much greater even than they would have been in 2016.
I get the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we are trying harder to make this friendship work than they are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, like, the relationship is interdependent. I believe, 35 states count Canada as their #1 export market.
Okay.
But let's be real. 3/4 of everything we export goes to a single destination, the United States. We are an export-based economy. If he slaps tariffs on, if he renegotiates NAFTA, if he tells us we have to spend $80 billion on defense a year immediately, like, the consequences on our economy and our country, relative in size, so much smaller relative in size than the U.S., are enormous. It's interdependent, but it's not an equal relationship.
Oh, interesting. What are you hearing from people in Ottawa? What's been the reaction?
So I've definitely been talking to as many people as I can this morning via text message, and I think there is genuine surprise. I think that they had, particularly people in and around the Prime Minister, had readied themselves for this possibility, but like a lot of Canadians, I don't think actually thought it might come to fruition, particularly with the trajectory of the last 10 days and the messaging from the Harris campaign, which seemed to indicate a very different outcome than what we saw unfold last night. So I feel like they're bracing themselves. And the other interesting question is, what kind of political dynamic will it impart on Canadian politics, right? What does this mean for Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau, and who stays in and who gets out? And does it change the framing at all for Canadian voters who are by and large not supporters, unlike Americans on this day, of Donald Trump? Do they view our own politicians in a different context because of what we're up against in the United States? I think that's going to be a big storyline to watch.
Also, you brought up the issue of election. Could we see echoes of maybe some of the campaign style that we saw down here south of the border affecting our election?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a good question. I would note that the Liberals just released digital ads with the same tagline as the Kamala Harris campaign. They might want to be rethinking those going forward. So I feel like what we thought would be the impact of that messaging from the Harris campaign, which we really did already see trickle through to the Trudeau government, that may be something that ends up being reversed. And then I just don't know what kind of dynamic it will impart. I do think, though, because of our proximity, because of the way we consume American news in Canada, there's no way the politics of this country will not in some way impact the politics and political calculations of our leaders in our country.
Listen, you had great coverage last night with CTV, and we appreciate you coming out here this morning. Always great to have your perspective, and very cool to have it with the White House in the background.
Doesn't suck, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Vassy. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.